Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Another first round playoff series preview. I think I said preview twice. Either way, my name is Jim Parsons. I'm here with thehockeyraiders.com. We are with Mariah Stark and Matthew Zator. We're going to be covering the Dallas Stars and Minnesota Wild series in this video. Mariah's going to be looking at Minnesota, and Matthew's going to kind of be covering here for Dallas. It's going to be a very interesting series. Before I get into either question with either one of you here, I'm just going to give a quick rundown of what we have seen so far from both of these teams in the regular season. Then I'll probably come to you guys and just ask what you think of the team and how they performed and what you're expecting from them. Dallas finishes second in the Central with 108 points. Minnesota with 103. They were third. Both actually gave Colorado a little bit of the run for their money, but couldn't quite catch them. Minnesota's like a heavy physical sort of battle team. Dallas, sort of the same thing. They finished 6-0, kind of coming into the playoffs. So they're the hot ones, but Minnesota went on a real big stretch there right after the All-Star break where they were 1-4. Mariah could probably help me out with that one. So they were really hot for a while there. So these are two, a lot of people we're talking to. This is kind of a series that people aren't really talking about, but could produce a winner that could challenge for the Western Conference here. So it's going to be entertaining. Jason Robertson kind of ran away with the scoring between these two teams with 109 points. It was a heck of a season for him. But Minnesota's got some really good pieces as well. Mariah, I'm going to start with you. Minnesota, what did you think of their regular season? How are you feeling about this team? Are you confident in what they're doing headed into the playoffs, and especially against somebody like Dallas?
So before that run you mentioned, I literally thought the Wild were going to miss playoffs, and I was like holding out hope, but I'm just like, this team's on, because they were not doing well. They couldn't win games. They were struggling. They were in that rut. The players kind of talk about where they get in that rut and they just kind of keep until they can pull themselves out of it and stop. They all have to accept the fact that it happens. It's just they have to figure a way out. Once they figured the way out, I was like, okay, we're putting things together. Things are going well. Kaprizov got injured, and I thought it was the end of the world. And then Boldy stepped up and everything, and they played phenomenal. They proved they have the ability to play in the playoffs. They just have to keep. I mean, the last few games, I wasn't impressed, but there was a lot of other stuff going on with other teams they were playing too, so it didn't really show what they're capable of. And they also sat a lot of their top guys to protect them too. So I'm happy. I'm not necessarily happy about facing Dallas, which I can detail later, but it is what it is. No matter who you play is going to be tough, and they have to step up or they're gone. So.
Well, in the series so far in the regular season, Dallas versus Minnesota, it's 2-0-2 for Dallas. So they pulled points out of every single game that they've played. The Wild picked up 2 wins, though, so it is somewhat even in that respect. But I guess you would have to put the edge in Dallas's favor that way. Matthew, what are you thinking about the Stars? I know before we came on here, you were looking at some of their stuff and you're like, this is a really good team. Like, this is a sneaky good team that few people talk about how effective they are. And they've got a lot to offer. They used to be a team that was kind of like shut you down, grind you down. And now they can score. They got some veterans that are having good seasons. Jamie Benn's on fire. So what do you think for Dallas here?
Yeah, you said it. They're sneaky. They seem to be a sneaky good team. I mean, you're looking at all their stats, and they're top 10 in a lot of categories. They're top 10 in goals for, goals against. They're one of the best defensive teams in the Western Conference. I believe they are the best, actually, in the West, and it's insane on how well they can score goals now too. And Jamie Benn, I thought he was at the end of his career. And he gets 33 goals. First time he's had a 30-goal season in a few seasons. And he's starting to look back to that elite player that, was one of the best in the NHL. And Tyler Seguin's still on a bit of he's not doing the same stuff as he used to. He's still not that elite guy, but he still can score, and he can still, he's just great chemistry with a lot of the players. And he's been here for a while too. So I think Dallas has a real good chance of coming out of the West, actually, with how well they are as a two-way team, because they can score goals, they can defend. They got a really good goaltender in Ottinger, who we saw last season what he can do in the playoffs. Was almost unbeatable against Calgary. So I mean, it's going to be fun to see what Dallas can do against Minnesota, because they got a lot of weapons and a lot of depth on defense up front. Like you mentioned, Jason Robertson, he had an insane season, and he was under his contract was up in the air just before the season started. So I think Dallas is going to give Minnesota a run for their money, because they're a really good team and had really good regular season. So we'll see what they can do in the playoffs.
Well, they've got two more players. Joe Pavelski with 77 points. Roope Hintz with 75, and Heiskanen was close with 73. The highest scoring forward in Minnesota was Kaprizov. And now, remember, I talked about how he missed some time, so he would have had more points had he been healthy all year. But the top end is scoring more often than Minnesota. I'm going to switch this over to you, Mariah. What are you looking at in terms of players to watch? Is it Kaprizov and him exploding on offense here and scoring for Minnesota? Is it something like Zuccarello? You talked about Matt Boldy already. Who are you kind of keeping your eye on here?
Kaprizov, obviously. I mean, he's still coming back from injury, but I mean, the guy looks like he wasn't even injured. I mean, unless you watch him all the time and pay attention to really how he skates. Like the first game he came back, I could tell he was a little bit hesitant, understandably. But it's like, you really missed a month and you just started skating like last week? How is this possible? I mean, he still looked phenomenal. And I can't remember if it was his first. I think that was the game he actually scored in too. It was either the first or the second game he was back. He only played like 2 games, but he's definitely one to watch. You can never count him out. Zuccarello will hopefully bounce back, because he was lost without Kirill. Boldy for sure. Boldy, he just, like, he's always been a great player for us. Really good, really gritty, aggressive. But once Kaprizov was out, I think he kind of realized that, okay, I need to step up and do something. Not that he wasn't already, but he just took the team and went. He was confident. He went for stuff. He didn't hold back. And that's really good. And they'll need him to keep doing that. I mean, though, a lot of the Wild players can score. I mean, even Ryan Reeves was scoring goals. And I think he had the first back-to-back points I'm trying to say that right. Points consecutive games, and the first time in his career. And I mean, that's impressive. The defense could score some more, but the other person I would say is Gustafsson, because from the way it sounds, they're going to go with Gustafsson and net, and I think that's the right choice. All the love to Fleury, but last playoffs was not great for him, so I think it's good to go with Gustafsson's been hot. He's younger, he's proven himself, and he's definitely going to watch. He's blowing my mind for how talented he's come over just a season.
It's funny how I was going to ask about the goaltending, how Marc-Andre Fleury seems to be in the same situation every year, right? He comes into Vegas, he's up against Robin Leonard, not really sure who he's going to play in Vegas, and then he's in Minnesota, and it looked like he's going to be the starter. Then Gustafsson sort of has the year that he's having, and Fleury sort of
he's
sitting on the side.
He's a good mentor.
Well, and he's a great backup. Like, if that's what he winds up being, he might be the best backup in the playoffs. Like, that could be the reality of what this is. And he's a great 1B if you need it, right? Like, if something were to happen with Gustafsson where he doesn't perform as well he's shown so far, you can feel confident going to Fleury. Like, that's No, go ahead.
He's the type of player that doesn't seem to get jealous either. I mean, I understand goalies wanting to play no matter what, but he seems kind of just, if they're going to win, they're going to win. So he's whatever works.
Yeah, I think he's the kind of person that wants to be as productive as he is an efficient teammate, right? If that makes any sense. Like, he values both, and whatever role he needs to play to help the team, I think he's going to do. Matthew, who are you looking at? I mean, you mentioned a few people. Jason Robertson's probably the obvious choice here, but is there a player outside of him or just him that you're really kind of watching when it comes to Dallas?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously Robertson's going to have to be good for them to go. I mean, and he's been amazing all season, but I'm looking at a guy that had a little bit, maybe a down season. He came to Dallas, Mason Marchment. He's the prototypical, I think, playoff player. Like, he I think could be a guy that could thrive in that environment like the playoffs. And there are guys that just don't, I mean, not saying that Mason Marchment hasn't, I mean, he had a great season last year with Florida, but didn't have as big of an impact in Dallas. But, in the playoffs, a different season. And I think he could potentially be a difference maker throughout because of the way he plays. And another guy I'm looking at is Tyler Seguin. I mentioned him a little bit there. I think he's another guy that didn't have a really good regular season, but could potentially turn it on in the playoffs. And he's a veteran. He's been there before. And of course, Jamie Benn. And I'm looking at Joe Pavelski as well, the ageless wonder. What is he, 38? He doesn't seem to be aging very much and still putting up ridiculous points. And he's got a ton of playoff experience and has performed in the playoffs as well. I think Pavelski is going to be a key in this series. And any of their depth guys like Wyatt Johnston had a heck of a season as a rookie, and could potentially, he's probably not going to be in the conversation. He could be in the conversation for the Calder, I guess. But there's so many other guys. But Johnston had a great season. He had some great chemistry with Jamie Benn as well. So yeah, a lot of these guys that you're not, Robertson's going to be good, but I think you're going to be looking at those, I don't know about their depth guys, but the guys other than him that are going to have to be difference makers for the Stars to move on.
Well, with as many names as you just mentioned, you just proved the earlier point that Dallas is just sneaky good, right? They've got a lot of pieces that I'm kind of curious about. Max Domi. I'm very interested to see if he's an effective player. The one kind of big piece that they added at the deadline here, who has the ability to be hot and cold. If he's hot, he's good, right? And if he's not, he kind of disappears. But I'm curious about that one. Mariah, I'm going to come back to you on this one. Is there a key for the Minnesota Wild here? Like something they got to do to get past Dallas, whether it's a strategy they deploy or certain players have to do certain things. What is it that's going to be the key for the Wild here?
Score right away. Quit waiting until the third period. The last 3 or 4 games, they haven't, I don't know how to say it. I nitpick teams, but they played okay. And then all of a sudden in the third period, they're down 2 goals, 3 goals, and they try to come back. It's like, guys, you already wasted your time. Like trying to wearing a team down, I can understand when you already have the lead, but trying to come from behind, just don't do it. It's been driving me crazy the last week. Other than that, staying composed, which they've actually, because the beginning of the season, they were the most penalized team in the NHL, and it was driving me absolutely nuts. Matt, I'm sure you can attest to that because that was probably in every single one of my takeaways that they were taking too many penalties. And the goaltending, the goaltending will take care of itself, but just mainly the offense, just getting going right away. Don't sit back, just force shots. Ottinger's a tough goalie to beat, and they're going to have to force it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point because they did rank 30th in goals for this season. So this is not the type of team like Minnesota can play that kind of grind you, shut you down structure where they play a heavy game and they sort of limit chances against and things like that. But they're going to have to score at some point, and that means shooting, and that means getting chances against the guy like Ottinger, who's going to stop most of what he sees. So if you're 30th in goals for and you don't improve on that in the playoffs, it's going to be really, really tricky. What about you, Matthew? Is there something that you're kind of looking for with Dallas as a key to their success?
I think just keep being that two-way. Seems like they're like a chameleon. They can play different styles. Like they're third in goals against in the league and behind the Boston Bruins and the Carolina Hurricanes. So they can play that defensive style where they can just shut you down. And Ottinger, we've seen what he can do and not be able to be scored on. And then they also can score goals. So it's not like they have a weakness there. I think just stay that type of team that can just play different types of styles. And, the defense, Heiskanen, again, a sneaky good defenseman, 73 points. And I didn't realize he was that high in points, tied with Quinn Hughes at the top there. So I think just keep going what they can do as being that two-way team that can just play any type of style. It just seems like they are able to do that. Special teams as well. They're both really good in penalty kill and power play. So, Minnesota, even if they have a good power play, I mean, they seem to be able to shut it down because they got great special teams. And I don't know if the last time that's happened where a team has had, I mean, most of the time you're going to have good special teams in the playoffs to win. And Dallas has top 10 in both categories. So yeah, I think just bottom line, just keep doing what they're doing in the regular season, because any team doesn't seem to be able to do it. And again, sneaky good in all, it seems like every category you look at.
Yeah, I'm going to be very curious to see if Dallas goes up early, like Mariah talked about how Minnesota tends to wait till later in the game to score a goal. If they're probably very good, and she would know the stats better than I would, but if Minnesota gets an early lead, how effectively they are at holding that lead. But if they're down early and Dallas gets an early lead in any game, how much it's going to be a struggle for Minnesota to either tie or get ahead in those games. So I think for me, if Dallas can get an early lead in some of these games, they're going to have a major advantage here. Mariah, what would you say would be a weakness for the Wild? Like if there's something that you're worried about, or kind of they typically do this and shoot themselves in the foot by doing this sort of thing. Like, is there something that you're watching with this team that you're like, I hope I don't see this?
Well, the waiting too long, but probably their penalties. Just stay out of the penalty box. It's hard to kill off a penalty when, especially lately, their top penalty killers have been the ones taking the penalties. Brodin took 2 in a game. Oh, Eric Sinek, before he got hurt, I think was in the box. Dewar, sorry, I say his name. He's usually pretty good, but Duhaime, I mean, those two, Dewey 1 and Dewey 2 is their nicknames. Duhaime and Dewar have actually been huge in penalty kill. I should have said that and players to look for, but they got to stay out of the penalty box, because I'm sure Dallas is going to irritate them on purpose, and knowing that the Wild sometimes have a hot head and will end up in the penalty box for retaliating. So that would probably be, behind scoring in the third period, my biggest worry.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too, because as Matthew said, they're top 10 in power play. And if you're going to go down a man and you know that you're struggling, especially if your penalty killers are going in the box, and you give a top 10 power play an opportunity to score, they're more often than not probably going to come close to scoring, if not scoring. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. Let's do some bold predictions. Did I give you the weakness opportunity there, Matthew? Have we come to you for that one yet?
No, but I'll say it. I don't know if Dallas has a real big one that I'm looking at. I'm trying to look for something. I was like, well, maybe their faceoffs aren't that good. No, they're 54.8 in faceoff percentage too. So puck possession is a good thing for them too. I don't know. They have a lot of stuff that I'm trying to think. If I watched the Stars every day, I probably would know a bit more, but
Sure.
Just looking at overall stats and how they look like, I don't really see anything that you can really exploit at this point. I mean, unless their big guys start going into a slump, or, Ottinger all of a sudden isn't good. I mean, that could be a big thing too, because they don't really have anyone behind him. Wedgwood's okay, but if Ottinger doesn't play well, I'm not sure they have anyone that can just get inserted. That's one thing I can see if something happens to Ottinger.
Yeah, that would be fair, because if you're relying on one goaltender, as good as that goaltender is, if they get hurt or something happens or they struggle in a couple of games, then you're kind of stuck if you don't have somebody to come in like the Wild do, where they have a Fleury and they have a Gustafsson to sort of alternate back and forth if they need to. Mariah, let's do some bold predictions. I love these ones because we get to talk a little bit about things that no one's expecting, that you're going to kind of go out on a limb and have some fun with it, and then something probably really obvious that you expect to see happen when it comes to the Wild. So I'll let you go first. What is a bold and a not so bold prediction for the Minnesota Wild?
This has been driving me crazy. I've been thinking about this all day, because like we were talking before the show last year when I did a preseason for the season prediction, and I said Colorado wasn't going to make the playoffs. Well, they won the cup. So if I say something good about scoring goals, I could jinx the player, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say Brock Faber, who is new to the Wild, gets playoff time, which it seems likely, and he scores a goal, even though he's a defenseman in a brand new one. So I'm going to go on that one and say that's my bold prediction. Not so bold, Kaprizov leads the Wilds in points.
That's probably a fair one. Yeah. Look at it this way. You're taking this this idea, this segment to heart. You're really going out there with these bold segments, and you're like, because at least you're giving it a shot, right? If you're right, you look like a genius, and if you're wrong, well, we just don't talk about it, right? But you are at least playing by the rules and really making some bold calls here. But I like that one.
Colorado fans should give me credit for last year.
Yes, it was Mariah was the reason that the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup last year. We'll say that. That's exactly what it was. Matthew, what about you? You got a bold prediction and a not so bold prediction for the Stars?
Well, I'm going to go bold and go Mason Marchment leads them in scoring in the series. I just have a feeling he's going to be a big difference maker. I said that before. I really liked how he played in Florida. Like I say, he hasn't been as big of an impact player in Dallas, but I think he could potentially be a difference maker. And just to go off that, I'll say Max Domi is also a big part of this series as well. For a not so bold, I mean, you can't say Jason Robertson's gonna score a hat trick. I'll say Jason Robertson will score a hat trick. I don't know if that's bold.
That's almost bold. You know,
it's almost bold.
It's very specific. If you were to put money down on that, you'd win something good.
I mean, in the playoffs, that's bold.
Yeah, hat tricks don't come often. So I'm gonna say Robertson's gonna have a big impact, and I'll add to the bold as well, and I'll say he has a hat trick in one of the games too.
No, that's good. I like that one. I'm going to add to myself to this one. I am curious to see what Klingberg does. He was an addition by the Minnesota Wild, and he's got some history with the Dallas Stars. Yeah. He's played much better since he got to Minnesota, since being in Anaheim, where he was not all that effective. I mean, it's a tough team to be effective on, probably, but I think he has an effect here. I think he plays pretty well for Minnesota, so I'm curious to see how that one goes. Let's do some respective MVPs for each side. Now, I've been telling people in these videos that you can pick whatever team you want to when it comes to the MVP. So, Mariah, you can stick with Minnesota and pick an MVP, or if you believe that maybe Dallas is going to win this and you think an MVP is going to come from that team, you can pick Dallas if you want. But who would be the one player in this series that you think is going to be kind of the standout that we're all talking about when the series is over?
That's hard because I have one answer, but I'm like, do I go with that?
Go with it.
Kaprizov. I mean, I have to.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you. Like it's a logical, safe assumption that he's going to be super effective. And you're probably right. If Minnesota does get out of the series, it'll probably be because of him. Like he's that effective and he's that important to them on offense. Matthew, what about you? Do you got an MVP for the series?
Well, it's easy to say Robertson, but I'm going to say Ottinger. I mean, he's going to have to be, I still think, because Minnesota Wild, they can score goals. I mean, Kaprizov can score. Matt Boldy has looked amazing. During that time when Kaprizov was out, he was scoring at the pace of Kaprizov. So I'll give him Minnesota as well. I'll give Matt Boldy. I think he's going to be a huge, huge part. I don't believe he was he on the team in the last playoffs last year?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, he was.
But again, he's got a full season now and he's been really impactful. I think he's going to have a much bigger difference in this playoffs. So I'll go those two guys.
No, I think that's fair. I think both of those are excellent choices. What about predictions? So let's decide who's winning and in how many games. Mariah, I'll start with you. Are you sticking with Minnesota and the team that you cover? Are you thinking it's the Stars? Who takes the series and in how many games to get it done?
I'm torn, but I'm going to go with the Wild in 7. I have to.
No, that's fair. I mean, it's second versus third in the Central, and there's only 5 points separating these two teams in the regular season. It's not that big a stretch to suggest that the Wild have a shot at this thing.
I will say if it's Dallas, it's going to be 5. The Wild will get one win if Dallas gets ahead.
Yeah, I suppose. So if I'm reading that correctly, either Minnesota's in this thing and they stretch it out, or Dallas takes an early lead and Minnesota crumbles. Is that where you're going?
I hate to say that, but probably.
Well, it might be.
I love it, but I have to be honest.
For sure, that makes sense. What about you, Matthew? Who are you picking?
I just looking at how Dallas has played, and I mean Minnesota's been really good too, but this is gonna be a really tough series. I think this is gonna go 7. But I think Ottinger is going to be the better goaltender in this one. So I'm gonna go when it goes to 7, it's the goaltender that makes the difference. So I'm gonna go Ottinger, and that means Dallas in 7.
Yeah, I'm going with Dallas too. Sorry, Mariah. I think that the Stars probably these two teams are close, different styles a little bit, but Heavy game. I think it's going to be physical. I do wonder what toll is going to take on both of these teams, whoever gets out of this series. But I am going to pick Dallas in 6. I think the Stars will probably pull this one out. I think Ottinger's going to be a big difference maker. I think Robertson's going to have a good series. I think Eriksson Ek missing for the Wild is a big deal. So I'm not really sure if that's going to be a difference maker, but I think it's a factor. So I'm going with Dallas in 6. That's going to do it, though. Thank you, both of you, for doing the first round preview with us. If one of these two teams makes it out, obviously one of them will, but whoever it is, Mariah, Matthew, will probably have you back to talk about whoever they face next. And we hope that everybody else watching this puts their comments in the YouTube channel and lets us know who they think is going to win it, who their MVP is, how many games, things like that. But again, Mariah, Matthew, thank you very much. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you on the other videos. Check them out. Go to thehockeyrace.com. Check out both of these writers' work. There's tons of it. We're going to have tons of coverage during the playoffs, and we'll talk to you on the next video. Thanks, everybody.